Jack Mercer wasn't like other astronauts. He grew up on a farm in Nebraska where his days were filled with heavy lifting and hard work. From sunrise to sunset, he carried feed bags, fixed tractors, and built fences. His body grew strong in ways that most people never experienced. Jack's father was different from the other farmers. William Mercer had once been an engineer before he moved his family to the countryside. He still read scientific journals and stayed up late working on strange projects in the barn. Jack's mother would smile and shake her head, but she never complained about her husband's odd hobbies. On Jack's 15th birthday, his father took him to the barn after dinner. "Got something to show you, son," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. Inside, where farm equipment should have been, stood a large circular platform surrounded by metal arms. Cables ran from the structure to a control panel nearby. It looked like something from a science fiction movie. "What is it?" Jack asked, walking around the strange machine. "A centrifuge," his father answered, running his hand along one of the metal arms. "It creates artificial gravity. We're going to train you to be stronger than anyone else on Earth." Jack didn't understand at first. Why would we need to do that? His father's face turned serious. "Because humanity is going to reach for the stars, Jack, and when we get there, we'll find planets with gravity stronger than Earth's. Someone needs to be ready." Over the next 10 years, Jack trained in his father's homemade centrifuge. They started small, just 1.2 times Earth's gravity. It made Jack's body feel heavy, like he was carrying a backpack full of rocks. Each step required more effort. Each movement needed more strength. As months passed, his father slowly increased the gravity. 1.3 G, 1.5 G, 1.7 G. Jack's muscles grew. His bones became dense. When other boys his age were playing video games, Jack was learning to function in a world that constantly pulled him down. By the time he turned 25, Jack could work out for an hour at 2G. His father recorded everything: heart rate, oxygen levels, muscle development. They kept their secret, knowing that others might not understand. Then the announcement came. The International Space Coalition was looking for astronauts for a special program. They needed people who could adapt to different environments. Jack knew this was what his father had prepared him for. "Go show them what you can do," his father said the day Jack left for training. "But don't tell them everything right away. Let them discover what you're capable of." The Space Coalition Training Center was a massive complex in Colorado. Glass buildings reflected the mountain landscape, and security checkpoints guarded every entrance. Jack arrived with one suitcase and his father's research hidden on a small drive. The other recruits came from military backgrounds or had advanced science degrees. Kevin Dunn was a pilot who bragged about his flight hours. Samantha Mills had 2 PhDs and reminded everyone whenever she could. Frank Porter was a Marine who treated everything like a competition. Jack stayed quiet during introductions. When asked about his background, he simply said, "Farmer from Nebraska." The others laughed, and Jack let them. He wasn't here to impress anyone with words. Commander Allison Wright ran the program with strict efficiency. She was in her 40s, with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. On the first day, she watched as the recruits completed basic fitness tests. "These tests will establish your baseline," she explained. "We'll use them to track your progress throughout the program." The tests were easy for Jack. Running, lifting, reaction time. His body moved through them without strain. He noticed Dr. Peter Collins watching him with growing interest. The scientist made notes on his tablet and whispered to Commander Wright. The other recruits noticed too. "Farm boy's doing pretty well," Kevin said during a water break. "Must be all that cow." Tipping, Jack just smiled. He'd heard worse. On the third day, Dr. Collins introduced them to the gravity chamber. It was a large room with metal floors and walls. Generators hummed beneath the flooring. "This chamber can simulate different gravity environments," Dr. Collins explained, adjusting his glasses. "We'll use it to prepare you for space stations with reduced gravity." The recruits took turns in the chamber at 0.5 G, bouncing around like children. When Jack's turn came, he moved with surprising control, as if he'd done it before. Impressive body awareness, Mercer, Commander Wright said when he finished. Later that week, after Jack had topped the charts in every test, he overheard Dr. Collins talking to his team in the hallway. Mercer is making the others look bad. One scientist said. His scores are off the charts. Let's see how confident he is when things get harder, Dr. Collins replied. Tomorrow let's put him in the chamber at 2G. That should humble our farmer. Jack smiled to himself. Little did they know, 2G felt like home. The next morning, Commander Wright called Jack into her office. Dr. Collins has suggested a special test for you, Mercer. We want to see how you handle increased gravity. Jack nodded. Whatever you need, Commander. When he entered the gravity chamber, the other recruits and scientists gathered behind the observation window. Jack could see them whispering, expecting him to struggle. We're setting the gravity to twice Earth normal, Dr. Collins announced through the speaker. If it becomes too difficult, just signal and we'll stop. The generators hummed louder. Jack felt the familiar pull, the weight settling into his bones. His body remembered the training in his father's barn. He began the standard movement test, walking from one end of the chamber to the other. It wasn't easy. 2 times gravity made every step an effort. But Jack had trained at this level for years. His breathing remained steady. His posture stayed strong. Behind the glass, the scientist stared in disbelief. Commander Wright's eyebrows rose slightly, the closest she ever came to showing surprise. After completing the test, Jack stood in the center of the chamber, sweat darkening his shirt but his stance still solid. He looked through the glass at the stunned faces and made a decision. It was time to show them what he could really do. Again, he said clearly, his voice firm despite the pressure crushing down on him. But triple it this time. The room fell silent. No one had ever requested higher gravity. Dr. Collins leaned forward to the microphone, his voice uncertain. Did you say triple? Jack nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. 3 times Earth gravity. I can handle it. He could feel his father's years of preparation in his muscles and his bones. Jack Mercer was ready to show them what a farmer from Nebraska could do. The room went silent after Jack's request. Dr. Collins stared at the microphone in his hand as if it had suddenly turned into a snake. Commander Wright stepped forward, her face serious. Mercer, 3 times Earth gravity is dangerous, she said. No one trains at that level. Jack stood firm in the gravity chamber, already feeling the weight of 2G pressing down on him. I've done it before, he said simply. The scientists exchanged confused looks. Dr. Linda Flores, the medical director, shook her head. Impossible. The human body isn't made to function at 3G for more than a few seconds, Frank Porter snorted. He's bluffing. Jack looked directly at the observation window. Test me. Commander Wright studied him for a long moment. Shut it down, she finally ordered. Get him out of there. As the gravity returned to normal, Jack felt the familiar lightness that always came after training. His body seemed to float as he walked out of the chamber. The other recruits stepped back as he passed, looking at him differently now. Commander Wright was waiting for him in the hallway. My office. Now. Jack followed her through the building. The commander's office was small and neat with just a desk and 2 chairs. Maps of planets covered one wall. A worn photo of a young woman in a spacesuit sat on the desk. Explain, Commander Wright said as they sat down. Jack took a small drive from his pocket and placed it on the desk. My father's research. He built a centrifuge in our barn when I was 15. I've been training in high gravity for the past 10 years. The commander picked up the drive, turning it over in her fingers. Why? My father believed we would need people who could live on high-gravity planets. He thought humans could adapt if they trained properly. And you've been at 3G before? Jack nodded. For short periods. My longest session was 12 minutes. Commander Wright leaned back in her chair. If what you're saying is true, Mercer, it changes everything. She stood up. But I need proof. And medical clearance. The next morning, Jack found himself in the medical bay. Dr. Flores ordered every test she could think of. Blood work, bone density scans, heart monitors, brain scans. Jack sat patiently through each one. This doesn't make sense, Dr. Flores, muttered as she looked at the results. Your bone density is 40% higher than normal. Your muscle fiber count is off the charts. She looked up at him. You're either a medical miracle or my father was right, Jack finished. Dr. Collins joined them later, along with Commander Wright. They gathered around a screen showing Jack's test results. Look at his spine, Dr. Flores pointed to the scan. The vertebrae have adapted to handle increased pressure. And his heart, it's larger than normal, but perfectly healthy. Dr. Collins still seemed doubtful. Even if his body has adapted, what about his brain? The blood pressure alone at 3G could cause a stroke. That's why we trained slowly, Jack explained. My father developed special breathing techniques to control blood flow. We studied how deep-sea divers handle pressure changes. Commander Wright made her decision. We'll test it, gradually, starting at 2G and working up in small increments. Over. The next few weeks, Jack became the center of an intensive research program. Every day he entered the gravity chamber while the scientists monitored his vital signs. They increased the gravity by 0.1 G each session. The other recruits watched with growing respect. Samantha Mills started asking Jack about his training methods. Even Kevin stopped making farm jokes. How does it feel? Samantha asked after watching Jack complete a workout at 2.5 G. Jack thought for a moment. Like swimming in mud while wearing heavy clothes. Your body feels wrong at first, then you adapt. At night, Jack studied his father's notes. William Mercer had been more than a farmer with a crazy idea. His research was detailed and scientific. He had predicted how the human body would change under different gravity conditions. So far, his predictions were proving correct. When they reached 2.8 G, Jack noticed Dr. Collins and Dr. Flores arguing outside the gravity chamber. It's too risky, Dr. Flores insisted. We should stop at 2.8 and study the results. He's fine, Dr. Collins replied. His vitals are stable. Besides, he asked for 3G. I want to see if he can actually do it. Jack pretended not to hear them. But that night he made his own preparations. He knew his body would be tested tomorrow. The next morning, the entire research team gathered for the 3G test. Commander Wright addressed Jack before he entered the chamber. This is voluntary, Mercer. You can stop at any time. Jack nodded. I understand. Inside the chamber, Jack centered himself. He heard the generators power up. The weight began to press down on him, stronger than anything he had felt since leaving his father's farm. At 3G, every part of Jack's body felt 3 times heavier. His blood pushed against his veins. His lungs worked harder to expand. Even keeping his eyes open required effort. But Jack had prepared for this moment his entire life. He began the breathing pattern his father had taught him. Slow inhale through the nose. Hold. Slow exhale through slightly parted lips. His heart rate steadied. The scientists watched in amazement as Jack took one step then another. Each movement was careful and controlled. His face showed strain, but not panic or pain. Blood pressure elevating, but within safe range, Dr. Flores reported, her voice tense. Core temperature rising. Another scientist added. Jack completed one lap around the chamber. Then he carefully lowered himself to the floor and began push-ups. Each one took tremendous effort. Down, pause, up. His arms shook, but they did not fail. After 5 minutes, Commander Wright spoke through the intercom. That's enough, Mercer. We've seen what we needed to see. But Jack wasn't finished. He had promised himself 10 minutes at 3G. He continued his exercises, ignoring the sweat dripping from his face. Mercer, Commander Wright said more firmly. Stop now. 2 more minutes, Jack managed to say between controlled breaths. When the 10 minutes were finally up, Jack stood in the center of the chamber. His legs trembled slightly, but he remained upright. He looked at the observation window and gave a small nod. As the gravity slowly decreased, Jack felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. He had done what his father believed was possible, but more importantly, he had proven something to himself. When he exited the chamber, the entire room was silent. Then Commander Wright stepped forward. Congratulations, Mercer, she said quietly. Now we need to talk about why we've been developing the gravity chamber in the first place. Jack looked at her, suddenly alert despite his exhaustion. What do you mean? I mean, Commander Wright said, that we weren't just testing you for science. We need people who can work in high gravity. She glanced at the other scientists before continuing. There's a planet we need to visit, and its gravity is twice that of Earth. Jack stared at Commander Wright, trying to understand what she had just said. A planet with twice Earth's gravity? His father had been right all along. Which planet? He asked. Commander Wright led Jack to a small conference room where Dr. Collins and Dr. Flores were waiting. On the large screen on the wall was an image of a blue-green planet. Kepler 186f, Dr. Collins said, pointing to the screen. It's about 500 light-years from Earth. We've been studying it for years. Jack looked at the planet. It seemed like Earth, with oceans and land masses. And you're sure about the gravity? Dr. Flores nodded. Our probes confirmed it. Surface gravity is 1.96 times Earth normal, almost exactly twice what we're used to. Jack thought of his father's predictions. William Mercer had guessed that habitable planets might have higher gravity than Earth. He had prepared his son for exactly this discovery. Why do we need to go there? Jack asked. Commander Wright touched a control and the image changed to show a mineral sample. This is element K. It's only found on Kepler 186f. We need it for our new fusion engines. The problem, Dr. Collins added, is that no one can work effectively in that gravity. Our robots can collect samples, but they break down quickly in the harsh conditions. We need humans on the ground. Jack understood now. And you've been looking for people who could adapt. Commander Wright nodded. We've tested hundreds of candidates. Most can barely function at 1.5G. No one has even come close to handling 2G for more than a few minutes. She looked directly at Jack. Until you. Jack felt the weight of their expectations. This wasn't just about proving his father right anymore. This was about a real mission with real consequences. How soon? He asked. 6 months, Commander Wright replied. We need to assemble a team and they'll all need to train under your guidance. Our ship, the Horizon, is almost ready. Jack thought about what this meant. 6 months to teach others what had taken him 10 years to learn. It seemed impossible, but then again so did training at 3G. I'll need full access to the gravity chamber, he said, and I want to review all your data on Kepler 186f. For the next month, Jack lived in the research facility. He studied everything about the planet while continuing his own training. The scientists were eager to learn from him, recording his breathing techniques and exercise methods. Dr. Flores became particularly interested in how Jack's body had adapted. Your father's research was years ahead of its time, she told him as they reviewed his latest medical scans. We could have made so much progress if the scientific community had listened to him. Jack didn't respond. He knew how the scientific world had treated his father, calling him a crackpot, rejecting his papers, mocking his theories. That was why William Mercer had retreated to a farm in Nebraska to work in peace. Commander Wright began selecting people for the mission team. She chose Samantha Mills for her scientific knowledge. Frank Porter was picked for his engineering skills. Kevin Dunn would be the pilot. 5 others were brought in from different departments. These are our best people, Commander Wright told Jack. But none of them can handle Kepler's gravity. That's where you come in. Jack met with the team in the gravity chamber. They looked at him with a mixture of respect and doubt. None of them believed they could do what he did. We'll start small, Jack explained. 1.2G. Focus on your breathing first. The training was difficult. Frank complained constantly. Kevin tried to rush through exercises and nearly passed out. Samantha was the only one who listened carefully and followed Jack's instructions exactly. They're not progressing fast enough, Commander Wright said after watching a training session. At this rate, they won't be ready in 6 months. Jack knew she was right. He needed to try something different. That night, he called his father's farm. His mother answered, surprised to hear from him. Jack, are you coming home soon? Not yet. Mom, is Dad's old equipment still in the barn? There was a pause. Yes, everything's still there. Why? I need his notes. The ones about the mental techniques. The next day, a package arrived from Nebraska. Inside was an old notebook filled with his father's handwriting. Jack spent the night reading it carefully. In the morning, he gathered the team in a quiet room instead of the gravity chamber. Today we're going to try something different, he told them. My father believed that high gravity adaptation wasn't just physical. It was mental, too. Jack taught them a type of meditation, how to visualize their bodies adapting to the pressure, how to accept the weight instead of fighting it. Your mind gives up before your body does, he explained. You need to change how you think about gravity. Some team members laughed at first. Frank called it hippie nonsense, but Jack insisted they try. After a week of mental training, Jack brought them back to the gravity chamber. This time, he set it to 1.5 G. Remember your breathing, he reminded them. Accept the weight. To everyone's surprise, the team performed better. They moved more easily. Their vital signs remained more stable. Even Frank had to admit the mental training helped. One evening, Jack found Samantha working late in the lab. She was studying the element K samples from Kepler 186f. This mineral could change everything, she told Jack, showing him her research. It doesn't just power fusion engines. It can store energy better than anything we've ever discovered. Jack looked at the sample. That's why this mission is so important. Samantha nodded. And why they need you. She hesitated before continuing. But there's something they're not telling us. Jack looked up. What do you mean? I've been reviewing the probe data, Samantha said, lowering her voice. There are areas on Kepler 186f where the gravity isn't stable. Some regions have gravity spikes of up to 3G. Jack felt a chill. No wonder Commander Wright had been so interested in his 3G training. Does the rest of the team know? He asked. Samantha shook her head. They probably think it would scare people off. I'm only telling you because, she paused, because I think you're the only one who could survive if something goes wrong. Jack thought about what this meant. The mission was more dangerous than anyone had said. But it also explained why his father had pushed him to train at such extreme levels. The next day, Jack asked to meet privately with Commander Wright. He brought Samantha's research with him. You knew about the gravity spikes, he said, placing the data on her desk. That's why you let me try 3G. Commander, Wright didn't deny it. We needed to know if anyone could handle worst-case scenarios. The team deserves to know the truth, Jack insisted. Commander Wright studied him for a moment. You're right, they do. She stood up. And they should hear it from the mission commander. Jack stared at her. Mission commander? Yes, Mercer. That's you. Commander Wright handed him an official document. Congratulations. You're now in charge of humanity's first mission to Kepler 186f. Jack read the document in his hands again. Mission commander. He had never expected this. He had come to the Space Coalition to prove his father's theories, not to lead a dangerous mission to another planet. Why me? He asked Commander Wright. I'm not even a real astronaut. She smiled slightly. You're the only one who can function properly in high gravity. The mission needs someone who can make decisions when conditions are at their worst. She gestured to the document. Besides, you know more about adapting to Kepler's environment than anyone else. Jack thought about his father. William Mercer had never gotten to see his work recognized. Now his son would lead humanity's first mission to a high-gravity world. There was a certain justice to it. When do I tell the team? Jack asked. Now, Commander Wright replied. They need to start seeing you as their leader. Telling the team went about as well as Jack expected. Kevin looked shocked. Frank argued loudly that a farm boy couldn't possibly lead the mission. Only Samantha seemed pleased with the decision. This is ridiculous, Frank said after Jack explained his new role. He doesn't have any space experience. He has the experience. That matters most for this mission, Samantha pointed out. He's the only one who can move normally in Kepler's gravity. Jack let them argue. He understood their concerns. He had the same doubts himself. But he also knew that no one else could do what he could do. There's something else you need to know, Jack said when the argument died down. He showed them Samantha's Data about the gravity spikes. Parts of Kepler have gravity up to 3G, that's why we've been training so hard. The room went silent as they processed this information. Even Frank looked concerned. Can any of us survive that? One of the scientists asked. Yes, Jack said firmly. With the right preparation, humans can adapt to much more than we think possible. My father proved that. Now we're going to prove it again. After the meeting, Jack walked to his quarters. His head was spinning with the responsibility that had been placed on him. As he passed the medical lab, Dr. Flores called to him. Commander, Mercer, she said with a small smile. I have something to show you. Inside the lab, Dr. Flores led him to a table covered with what looked like thin armor. We've been developing these, she explained, picking up a piece. Gravity suits. They help distribute the pressure more evenly across the body. Jack examined the suit. It was made of a material he didn't recognize. How much does it help? It reduces the effective gravity by about 20%, Dr. Flores said. Not enough to make Kepler comfortable, but enough to help in an emergency. Jack nodded. Make sure everyone has one. And make one for me too. We already did, Dr. Flores said, pointing to a larger suit, but I don't think you'll need it as much as the others. The next 3 months were the hardest of Jack's life. He pushed the team to their limits, training them to function in increasingly higher gravity. At the same time, he had to learn about spacecraft operations, mission protocols, and the science behind Element K. Frank continued to resist Jack's leadership, but even he couldn't deny the results of the training. The entire team could now work effectively at 1.5 G and briefly function at 1.8 G. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than anyone had thought possible. 2 months before launch, Jack received a call from his mother. Your father's sick, Jack, she said, her voice tight with worry. The doctors say it's his heart. He's asking for you. Jack flew home the next day. The farm looked smaller than he remembered. The barn where he had spent so many hours training was weathered and gray. His father lay in bed looking pale and thin. There he is, William Mercer said weakly as Jack entered the room. The commander. Jack sat beside the bed. You heard about that? His father smiled. Your mother reads me all the articles. Nebraska farmer to lead historic space mission. You're famous, son. Jack took his father's hand. It's all because of you. Everything you taught me. Everything you believed. William's eyes filled with tears. I always knew you were meant for something important. When you were little, you would look up at the stars for hours. They talked until William grew tired. As his father drifted to sleep, Jack made a promise to himself. He would make this mission succeed, not just for humanity or for science, but for the man who had prepared him for the stars. Back at the Space Coalition, final preparations for the mission were underway. The Horizon was a massive ship, designed to carry the team and their equipment to Kepler 186F. Jack spent hours learning about every system and backup plan. 1 week before launch, he gathered the team for a final training session in the gravity chamber. Today we're going to try something new, he announced. We're going to practice emergency procedures at 2G. Frank shook his head. That's Kepler's gravity. We can barely move at that level. That's the point, Jack replied. If something goes wrong on Kepler, we need to know we can handle it. The session was difficult. Everyone struggled with the intense gravity. Even Jack, who was used to higher levels, felt the strain. But they completed the emergency drills, slowly but successfully. Afterward, Jack found Kevin sitting alone in the break room. Still worried about the mission? Jack asked, sitting across from him. Kevin nodded. What if we get there and can't do our jobs? What if the gravity is too much? Jack thought about his father's words from years ago. Humans can adapt to almost anything if they have the right mindset. The gravity will be hard at first, but we'll adjust. He looked Kevin in the eye. I believe in this team. I wouldn't be leading it if I didn't. Launch day arrived with clear skies. The team boarded the Horizon dressed in their blue flight suits. Jack was the last to enter, pausing to look back at Earth one more time. His mother was there to see him off. His father had been too ill to travel, but he had sent a message that Jack carried in his pocket. "Reach for the stars, son. They've been waiting for you." As the countdown began, Jack felt a strange calm. All those years training in his father's homemade centrifuge had led to this moment. What had started as a joke, doubling gravity to humble him, had revealed his true purpose. The engines fired, and the horizon lifted from Earth. Jack watched through a small window as his home planet grew smaller. The journey would take 6 months. Then they would face the true test, a world that would try to crush them with twice the force they had known all their lives. Jack was ready, and thanks to him, his team would be ready too. The 6 months in space passed slowly. Jack used the time to continue training his team. The Horizon had a small gravity chamber where they practiced daily. "Your body will start to weaken in zero gravity," Jack explained during their first week. "On board, we need to maintain our strength." The team worked hard. Even Frank, who had once doubted Jack's leadership, now followed his instructions without complaint. They all understood what was waiting for them on Kepler 186F. Jack received a message from Earth during their 3rd month of travel. His mother's face appeared on the screen, tired but smiling. "Your father is gone, Jack," she said gently. "His heart gave out yesterday." Jack sat alone in his cabin that night, holding his father's last message. William Mercer had died without seeing his theories proven right. Without knowing if his son would succeed, Jack made a silent promise to honor his father's work. The next day, he called the team together. "My father used to say that humans are only limited by what they believe is possible," Jack told them. "When we reach Kepler, we're going to prove that humans can adapt to any environment." As they approached the planet, excitement mixed with fear. The Horizon's sensors confirmed what they already knew. Surface gravity was 1.96 times Earth normal, with some regions experiencing spikes up to 3G. "We'll establish our base in this valley," Jack said, pointing to a map during their final briefing. "The gravity is stable there. We'll only enter the high gravity zones when necessary, and always with a partner." Kevin guided the ship into orbit, around Kepler 186F. The planet filled their viewports, a blue-green world with swirling white clouds and vast oceans. It looked like Earth, but they all knew it was very different. "Prepare for landing," Jack ordered. "Everyone in gravity suits." The landing module separated from the main ship. As they descended through Kepler's atmosphere, Jack felt a growing pressure. The planet's pull was already affecting them. When they touched down, Jack took a deep breath. "Remember your training," he told the team. "Move slowly, breathe deeply. Accept the weight." Jack was the first to step onto Kepler's surface. The moment his boot touched the ground, he felt as if someone had placed a heavy backpack on his shoulders. His body felt twice as heavy as normal, but thanks to years of training, he could still move. "Conditions as expected," he reported, taking careful steps away from the landing module. "Gravity consistent with projections." The others followed, moving awkwardly in their gravity suits. Samantha stumbled but caught herself. Frank moved with slow, deliberate steps. Kevin stayed close to the ship, his face showing strain. They set up their base camp methodically. What would have taken hours on Earth took them all day. By the time they finished, everyone was exhausted except Jack. "Get some rest," he told them. "Your bodies will start adapting soon." Over the next few weeks, they began their work. Samantha led the scientific team, collecting samples of element K from nearby deposits. Frank supervised the construction of more permanent structures. Kevin maintained the communications with the Horizon in orbit. Jack kept them on a strict training regimen. Each day they spent time without their gravity suits, allowing their bodies to gradually adapt to Kepler's pull. "It's getting easier," Samantha told Jack after a month. "I can feel my body changing." Jack nodded. "The human body is amazing. Give it time, and it can adapt to almost anything." Their mission was proceeding as planned until the day Frank detected unusual readings from a nearby mountain range. The element K readings are off the charts, he explained, showing Jack the data. It's the richest deposit we've found so far. Jack studied the map. That's in a gravity spike zone. The readings show it fluctuates between 2.5 and 3G. Frank nodded. I know, but this deposit could be worth the entire mission alone. After discussing it with the team, Jack decided to lead a small expedition to the mountain. He selected Samantha and Frank to accompany him. We'll wear the gravity suits, he instructed, and we'll turn back at the first sign of trouble. They set out the next morning. As they moved deeper into the mountains, Jack felt the increasing pull. Even with his training, 2.7G was challenging. Frank and Samantha moved more slowly, their HFY breathing labored. We should be close, Samantha said, checking her scanner. Just over this ridge. As they climbed, the ground suddenly shook beneath them. Rocks tumbled down the mountainside. Earthquake, Frank shouted. Jack felt the gravity intensify as the ground continued to shake. His scanner showed 3G and climbing. They needed to get back immediately. Move, he ordered. Back to base. They turned, but it was too late. A massive rock slide blocked their path. Frank was hit by a falling boulder and fell to the ground, his leg trapped under the rock. Help, he called, his face pale with pain. Jack checked his scanner again. The gravity was now at 3.2G and still rising. They were in serious danger. My suit is malfunctioning, Samantha gasped, struggling to move. Jack made a quick decision. He removed his gravity suit and gave it to her. This will help you, he said. Get Frank free and start moving down the mountain. I'll find another way. Around? But without the suit, Samantha began. I've trained for this, Jack interrupted. Go. As Samantha helped Frank, Jack began moving through the falling rocks. Without his gravity suit, he felt the full force of Kepler's gravity spike. Each step was like lifting a heavy weight. His lungs burned with the effort to breathe. The ground shook again. Jack's scanner showed 3.5G. He had never trained at this level. His vision began to blur, but he kept moving. Jack found a narrow path through the rocks. He could see Samantha and Frank ahead, slowly making their way down the mountain. They would make it to safety. His body screamed in protest with each step. Jack focused on his breathing, using every technique his father had taught him. He thought of William Mercer and his crazy centrifuge in a Nebraska barn. His father had prepared him for this moment. When Jack finally reached base camp, he collapsed just outside the door. Kevin and 2 others rushed out to help him. His pulse is weak, one of the medics said. Get him inside! Jack woke 2 days later in the medical bay. Dr. Flores, who had remained on the horizon, spoke to him through a video link. You experienced 3.5 times Earth gravity without a suit, she said, her voice filled with amazement. By all medical understanding, that should have caused severe injury or death. Jack smiled weakly. Guess my father was right after all. The mission continued for another 6 months. They collected more element K than expected and conducted valuable research on adapting to high gravity. When they returned to Earth, Jack carried 2 things: a sample of element K for his mother and his father's research notebook. The notebook was placed in the Space Coalition's main hall, alongside a plaque that read, William Mercer, visionary pioneer of human adaptation to extreme environments. The scientific community that had once mocked William Mercer now studied his work with respect. Universities created new programs focused on gravity adaptation. Jack was asked to lead a permanent research station on Kepler 186f. 1 year after their return, Jack visited his father's grave. He placed a small rock from Kepler on the headstone. You were right, Dad, he said quietly. Humans can adapt to anything, even when others think it's impossible. As he walked away, Jack thought about how it all began, with scientists doubling gravity as a joke, and him demanding triple instead. That moment had changed everything, not just for him, but for the future of human space exploration. What had started as a challenge had opened a door to the stars.